Commander Jax Riley sat in the Galactic Expedition Council chamber, picking at her cuticles while Ambassador Krill clicked through his 73rd slide of the briefing. 73rd, she'd counted. And here, Krill's mandibles chittered nervously, his 6 eyes blinking in non-synchronous horror. "We have Explorer Team Gamma. Note the lack of remains. The plants dissolved them entirely within 4 minutes?" Jax yawned. Cool. Cool? Krill's antennae shot straight up. Commander Riley, perhaps you misunderstand the gravity of Death World 47b. In the past decade, we have lost 42 explorers to the Carnivorous Flora alone, 42 highly trained xenobotanists from across the galaxy. Yeah, I read the file. Jax leaned back in her chair, boots propped on the conference table. Very unprofessional. She knew it. She also knew that every alien in this room had declined this mission before the Council got desperate enough to ask the humans. "So you want me to go down there, grab some samples, don't get eaten, standard Tuesday." A gelatinous delegate named Counselor Bleem wobbled disapprovingly. "This is not a joking matter, human. These are not simple plants. They are aggressive, intelligent, and have evolved specifically to consume complex life forms. So have mosquitoes, and we still have picnics." Jax pulled up the mission brief on her data pad, scrolling past the 17 pages of warnings. "Look, you guys need botanical samples for your fancy research division. Nobody else wants to go because apparently carnivorous plants are where the entire galaxy draws the line. But humans, we literally brought roses back from the brink of extinction just because they smelled nice, and those things have thorns. We're weirdly good at this." Krill's exoskeleton seemed to pale, which Jax didn't think was biologically possible. "Commander, I must stress that confidence has been the downfall of every previous expedition. The Flora of 47b has developed techniques specifically designed to lure prey into complacency before striking. They are patient. They are cunning. They're plants, Krill. They are carnivorous plants." Jax stood, stretching. "Tell you what, I'll bring back your samples, and I'll try real hard not to die horribly. Deal?" She didn't wait for an answer, heading toward the door. "Oh, and Krill, maybe invest in a gardener next time instead of a combat team. Just a thought." Behind her, she heard Bleem gurgle something that her translator rendered as, "Humans are going to get us all killed." Probably true, she thought, grinning. But not today. The landing was smooth, which Jax decided to take as a good omen. Death World 47b looked exactly like the photos. Purple-tinted atmosphere, crimson soil, and vegetation that seemed to writhe even when there wasn't any wind. Creepy, she loved it. "Commander Riley, please confirm your vital signs." Vorp's voice crackled through her comm. The floating jellyfish alien was monitoring from orbit, which Jax suspected meant he was far enough away to run if things went sideways. "All good, Vorp. Setting foot on the surface now." She stepped off the ramp, scanner in one hand, collection kit in the other. The air smelled like copper and honeysuckle. Atmosphere's breathable, gravity's 0.98 standard. Honestly, this place is nicer than Denver. Please maintain constant communication. The Flora can strike with minimal warning. Copy that. Jax walked toward the nearest cluster of plants, a collection of bulbous pods hanging from twisted vines. They pulsed gently, almost like breathing. Her scanner beeped. High concentrations of digestive enzymes, paralytic compounds in the surface coating, aggressive prey capture response likely. "Oh, you're just a big pitcher plant, aren't you?" She tapped one of the pods with her stylus. It immediately snapped open, revealing a rows of crystalline teeth and a gullet that glowed an inviting amber. "Yeah, nice try, buddy." A vine whipped toward her ankle. Without looking, Jax sidestepped and caught it mid-strike. "Nope. A bad plant." The vine thrashed in her grip. She pulled out her pruning shears. Yes, she'd brought pruning shears to a death world. Krill had nearly had an aneurysm and snipped the grasping tendril. "See, this is why nobody likes you. Boundaries." "Commander, your heart rate just spiked." Vorp sounded panicked. "That's called annoyance, Vorp. These things have no manners." She bagged the vine sample, sealing it in a stasis container. Moving to the Snapdragon variants, they're the big red ones that reportedly decapitated Explorer Team Delta. Perhaps we should reconsider the mission parameters. Vorp, buddy, I'm 20 meters in. Relax. Oh. The snapdragons were impressive, she had to admit. 3 meters tall, petals that looked like scales, and a hinged jaw structure that could probably bite through titanium. One of them tracked her movement, its flower head swiveling with predatory focus. Okay, that's actually cool, Jax murmured, approaching slowly. The plant's jaw opened, releasing a sweet-smelling mist. Her scanner screamed warnings about neurotoxins. Yeah, I can smell the murder from here, thanks. The snapdragon lunged. Jax didn't flinch. She just booped it firmly on what she decided was its nose, the pollen-heavy stamen in the center of its jaw. The plant froze mid-strike, seemingly confused that its prey had just treated it like a misbehaving dog. Who's the aggressive boy? You are. Yes, you are. She collected a petal sample while the plant sat there, stunned. But we don't eat people, do we? No, we don't. From orbit, Vorp made a sound like a horrified wheeze. Commander, are you baby-talking the Carnivorous Flora? It's establishing dominance, Vorp. Plant Psychology 101. That is not a real field of study. It is now. By hour 2, Jax had collected samples from 7 different species, and she was starting to notice a pattern. The plants weren't actually mindless killing machines. They were just really, really aggressive about defending their space, kind of like her neighbor's rose bushes back home, but with more acid and screaming. Well, the plants didn't actually scream. That was Vorp every time she did something he considered suicidal. Commander, the creeping tendril behind you is classified as a Class 5 strangler variant. Jax glanced back. Sure enough, a thick vine covered in poisonous barbs was slithering toward her, probably planning to wrap around her throat and squeeze until something important popped. She'd read the report. Very effective technique. She turned to face it fully, hands on her hips. Stop. The vine paused. I can see you. I know what you're doing, and I'm telling you right now it's not going to work. She pointed at the ground near her feet. You want nutrients? There's a perfectly good decomposing log right here, full of bugs and fungi. Delicious. But you don't get to eat me, understand? The vine hesitated as if genuinely considering her offer. Then it slowly redirected toward the log, barbs retracting slightly. Good choice. Jax made a note in her datapad. Hypothesis. Flora responds to confident assertion of boundaries and alternative food sources. Behavior modification possible with firm verbal commands. And, Commander, you are not actually domesticating Death World plants. Not with that attitude, I'm not. She approached the strangler vine carefully and cut a small sample from a non-vital section. The plant didn't attack. It just wrapped itself tighter around the log, apparently satisfied with the arrangement. See, we're negotiating. It's called diplomacy. Diplomacy is for sentient species. Tell that to my African violet. Thing guilt-tripped me into better watering schedule. The real test came when she encountered the granddaddy of them all, a massive Venus flytrap variant that the previous explorers had called the Maw. Reports said it was 12 meters across, had consumed an entire research team in one snap, and could sense prey from 50 meters away. Jax found it in a clearing, basking in the red sunlight filtering through the canopy. It was beautiful in a horrifying sort of way. The trap lobes were deep purple with phosphorescent veins, and the trigger hairs inside looked like crystal spikes. Okay, big guy, let's talk. She stepped into its sensor range deliberately. The trap started to close, those massive lobes swinging shut like the jaws of some ancient god. Jax jammed her collection pole, reinforced titanium, rated for deep core drilling, right between the lobes. The plant clamped down on it with enough force to dent the metal, but it held. Yeah, that's not food. She walked along the edge of the trap, examining the muscle structure. You know what your problem is. You're overcommitted. You see movement. You snap shut. You don't think it through. That's how you end up chewing on rocks and titanium poles. The Maw thrashed, trying to spit out the pole. Jax patted one of its lobes. Learn to be selective, buddy. Not everything that moves is a meal. She collected her samples. Trigger hair, digestive enzyme swab, leaf tissue, while the plant essentially threw a tantrum around her pole. By the time she extracted the pole and stepped back, the Maw seemed almost sulky. Don't be like that. You'll thank me when you stop getting indigestion. That's when she noticed the small vine. It had been following her for the past 20 minutes, staying just at the edge of her peripheral vision, thin, green, with tiny leaves that almost looked curious. Every time she moved, it crept closer. What do you want? She knelt down. The vine extended a tendril toward her hand, gentle as anything. No barbs, no toxins, just contact. Jax felt something warm bloom in her chest. Oh, you're a sweetheart, aren't you? She let the vine wrap loosely around her wrist. Okay, you can come with me, but no strangling. Those are the rules. From orbit, Vorp had gone completely silent. Jax checked her comm. Hey, you still there? I am updating my resume, Vorp said quietly. The Galactic Council is going to have me decontaminated for allowing this. Allowing? Vorp? I'm a grown woman making grown woman decisions. You have befriended a carnivorous plant. Allegedly carnivorous? This little guy's a sweetie. The vine tightened affectionately around her arm. See, he likes me. That is not reassuring, Commander. Jax was humming while cataloging her samples, much to Vorp's dismay when her scanner started screaming, not the polite beeping it did for carnivorous plants. This was the full-blown red alert, something very bad is coming kind of screaming. Vorp, you seen this? Affirmative, large heat signature approaching your position. Mass estimates indicate, Commander, that is a dreadmaw crusher. What now? Apex predator, herbivorous diet. It eats the carnivorous plants. Jax blinked. Hold on, you're telling me there's something on this death world that's so metal it eats the things that eat everything else. Commander, you need to return to the ship immediately. The ground started to shake. Through the crimson forest, Jax could see trees bending and snapping as something massive bulldozed its way toward her clearing. The vine on her arm tightened nervously. Yeah, I'm with you, buddy, she muttered. The dreadmaw crusher burst through the tree line, and Jax had to admit it was impressive. Looked like someone crossed a rhinoceros with a wood chipper and gave it 6 legs and armor plating. Its mouth was a rotating series of grinding plates, currently chewing on what looked like a snapdragon plant. The snapdragon was screaming. Jax didn't know plants could scream. Okay, that's new information, she said, backing up slowly. Her little vine friend unwrapped from her arm and dropped to the ground, apparently deciding discretion was the better part of valor. The crusher spotted her. Its grinding mouth stopped mid-chew, and it made a sound like a garbage disposal encountering silverware. Then it charged. Vorp, I'm open to suggestions. Run! That's not helpful. Jax dove behind the maw's massive trap, which she was now reconsidering as a terrible hiding spot. The crusher didn't slow down. It was apparently used to eating carnivorous plants and saw no reason why one should stop it now. But then something interesting happened. The maw snapped shut on the crusher's front legs. The strangler vines erupted from the undergrowth, wrapping around its midsection. A whole cluster of snapdragons emerged from the forest edge, jaws open and dripping with acid. Even her little vine friend had returned, joined by what looked like 50 of its relatives, all wrapping around the crusher's back legs. The plants were fighting back, and they were fighting for her. Huh, Jax said, watching the coordinated assault. So you guys do teamwork? The crusher thrashed, its grinding mouth tearing through vines and snapping plant stems. It was strong, but the Flora had numbers and home field advantage. Jax realized she was just standing there watching like an idiot. Right, helping. She grabbed her sample kit and pulled out the concentrated nutrient solution she'd brought for emergencies. It was designed to supercharge plant growth for rapid specimen cultivation. She'd never tested it in combat conditions before. There's a first time for everything. She sprayed the solution on the strangler vines, and they exploded in size, doubling their diameter in seconds. The crusher's movement slowed as the enhanced vines constricted like pythons. Jax circled around and sprayed the maw's trigger hairs. Okay, big guy, remember what we talked about, being selective? She pointed at the crusher. That thing eats your friends, so maybe stop chewing on the titanium and focus on the actual threat? The maw released her pole and redirected its massive lobes toward the crusher's head. The snap was like a thunderclap. The creature's grinding mouth was suddenly trapped inside the trap, plates screeching against the plant's crystalline teeth. That's what I'm talking about, Jax pumped her fist. Teamwork. The fight lasted another 3 minutes. The crusher was tough, but it couldn't handle a coordinated assault from an entire ecosystem that had decided one human was worth protecting. When it finally collapsed, the plants didn't even try to consume it. They just held it down until it stopped moving, then slowly retreated. Jack stood in the clearing, breathing hard, covered in plant sap and alien soil. Her little vine friend crept back to her ankle and wrapped around it gently like a cat, rubbing against her leg. Okay, she said into her calm. So revised assessment. The plants aren't the problem. They're just territorial. And apparently if you're not a jerk to them, they'll have your back. Vorp's silence was deafening. Vorp? I am going to be reassigned to waste management, he said finally, but that was extraordinary. Thanks, buddy. Jax looked around at the plants, some of which were still watching her. She gave them a little salute. Thanks, guys. Solid work. The snapdragon swayed. The maw's lobes lifted slightly. The strangler vines rustled. Jax could have sworn they were pleased. Jax's ship touched down on the Galactic Council's landing platform with considerably more cargo than it had left with. The decontamination team was already waiting, suited up in full hazmat gear like she was returning with a plague ship instead of botanical samples. Commander Riley Krill's voice crackled over the external comm before she'd even opened the hatch. Please confirm you have secured all samples in proper containment units before disembarking. Jax hit the door release. Define proper containment. The hatch opened. Jax stepped out, and 3 things happened simultaneously. 1, the decontamination team took a collective step backward. 2, Ambassador Krill's antennae went completely rigid. 3, Counselor Bleem made a sound like a garbage disposal trying to process a brick. Jack stood there, grinning, with approximately 7 meters of carnivorous vine woven through her hair like the world's most dangerous French braid. The vine's little leaves caught the station's artificial light, almost sparkling. Several tendrils draped over her shoulders like a very aggressive scarf. What, Krill managed, his translator barely keeping up with his chittering, is that? This is Kevin. Jax reached up and patted one of the vine sections. It curled affectionately around her finger. He's a strangler variant. Super friendly once you establish boundaries. Wants to come everywhere with me. It's actually adorable. That is not adorable. That is a Class 5 predatory organism currently wrapped around your neck. Yeah, but he's not squeezing. See, we have an understanding. She walked down the ramp carrying a container in each hand. Behind her, several more containers floated on an anti-grav pallet, along with 3 potted plants that definitely hadn't been on the approved sample list. Also, I brought friends. A security officer, some kind of reptilian species Jax hadn't met before, stepped forward with a scanning device. His hand was shaking. Ma'am, we need to verify the containment integrity of one of the potted plants. A small snapdragon variant about the size of a house cat turned its flower head toward him and hissed. Actual hissing. The officer nearly dropped his scanner. Ignore Bitey, Jax said cheerfully. He's just protective, hasn't actually bitten anyone who didn't deserve it. How many beings has it bitten? Bleem gurgled. Technically 0, but the day's young. Krill approached cautiously, his compound eyes fixed on the vine in her hair. Commander Riley, the mission parameters were very specific. Collect samples. Return them in sealed, isolated containment. You were not authorized to bring back living specimens for personal companionship. About that, Jack set down her containers and pulled out her data pad. I wrote a full report during the flight back. Turns out the Carnivorous Flora of Death World 47b aren't actually indiscriminate killers. They're territorial guardians with a sophisticated threat assessment system. They only attack what they perceive as hostile or food. Treat them with respect, establish clear boundaries, And they're perfectly manageable. She pulled up a video file. See, here's me hand-feeding a Snapdragon variant, and here's the maw, that's the big one that ate Explorer Team Theta, learning to differentiate between prey items and non-prey items. And this is a whole compilation of the local flora defending me from an actual apex predator. The assembled aliens watched the footage in silence. On screen, Jax was literally conducting an orchestra of carnivorous plants like some kind of deranged Disney princess, directing them to coordinate their assault on the Dreadmaw Crusher. "This is impossible," Krill whispered. "It's botany," Jax corrected. "Also, I wrote a care guide." She tossed him a data chip. "Carnivorous Flora Care for Beginners." Covers feeding schedules, territorial requirements, communication techniques, and a whole section on why you shouldn't send combat teams to deal with plants. You need gardeners, Krill, not soldiers. But the previous 42 expeditions went in expecting a fight and got one. Plants respond to threat postures, Ambassador. You send in people in battle armor carrying plasma rifles, and yeah, the flora is going to assume you're dangerous. I showed up with pruning shears and a spray bottle. A medical officer, some kind of furry mammalian species, cleared her throat nervously. "Commander, we need to perform a full biological scan to ensure you haven't been contaminated with what? Plant DNA? Yeah, Kevin shed some pollen on me. I took an antihistamine. I'm fine." Jack scratched behind one of the vine's leaf clusters. It made a rustling sound that might have been contentment. "Look, I know this seems crazy to you guys, but humans have been domesticating dangerous organisms for thousands of years. We turned wolves into pugs. We made roses that smell pretty despite their thorns. We keep Venus flytraps as desk decorations." "Those are not carnivorous on the same scale," Bleem protested. "Scale's relative." Jax shrugged. "Point is, these plants aren't monsters. They're just plants. Aggressive plants, sure. Plants that will absolutely eat you if you're stupid about approaching them, but plants nonetheless." Krill stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Kevin, who waved a tendril at him politely, then back at Jax. "The Council," he said slowly, "is going to require extensive documentation before we can approve any changes to the Death World classification protocols." Already done. 50 pages fully annotated with video evidence and chemical analysis of the behavioral response patterns. She grinned. "Also, I'm keeping Kevin non-negotiable. That is highly irregular, so sending 42 expeditions to their deaths before asking the humans for help, but here we are." Krill's mandibles clicked in what Jax had learned was the alien equivalent of a heavy sigh. "Very well. Proceed to debriefing room 7, and please attempt to keep your plant companion from eating anyone in the corridors." "Kevin's a professional, aren't you, buddy?" The vine squeezed her shoulder gently. "See? Total professional." 3 weeks later, Jax sat in her newly expanded quarters. They'd had to give her the cargo bay after Kevin grew another 4 meters, watching the Galactic News Network with a cup of coffee in one hand and a spray bottle in the other. Kevin was trying to strangle her reading lamp again. "No," she said, spritzing him with water. "Bad vine. We've talked about this." Kevin retreated sulkily, wrapping himself around the support beam instead. On the screen, Ambassador Krill was giving an interview about the Death World 47B situation, looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 weeks, which was impressive considering his species didn't visibly age. "Yes, we have reclassified the planet from extreme hazard to moderate hazard, pending proper botanical training," Krill was saying, his antennae drooping with exhaustion. "Commander Riley's report has been reviewed by the Xenobiology Committee, and while her methods are unorthodox, the results are undeniable." The interviewer, a gaseous being whose form kept shifting colors, pulsed with curiosity. "Is it true that humans are now selling carnivorous Death World plants as decorative items?" Krill's mandibles twitched. "Unfortunately, yes." Jax grinned and refreshed her sales page. Riley's Exotic Flora Emporium had gone live 5 days ago, and she was already back-ordered through next quarter. Turns out once you proved the plants weren't going to murder everyone, humans thought they were the coolest thing ever. Her comm chimed. She accepted the call, and her business partner's face appeared on screen. Marcus Chen, no relation to anyone named Sarah, was a hydroponics engineer from New Tokyo Station who'd heard about her exploits and immediately wanted in. "Jax, we got a problem," Marcus said, but he was grinning. "The Snapdragon kit sold out in 4 hours." 4 hours? Do you know how many angry emails I'm getting from people who missed the drop? Tell them next shipment's in 2 weeks. I need to go back to 47B anyway. The Ma agreed to let me take some seedlings if I bring him fertilizer. You're negotiating with plants now? Don't be speciesist, Marcus. The Ma's very intelligent. He just has specific dietary requirements. She took a sip of coffee. Also, we need to expand the care guide. Someone on Earth Station 3 tried to keep their strangler vine in a closet, and it ate their entire wardrobe in protest. That's actually hilarious. It's a teaching moment. These are not low-maintenance plants, people. Her door chimed. "Come in." Vorp floated in, his jellyfish body pulsing with colors Jax had learned meant resigned acceptance. "Commander Riley, I've been asked to deliver this to you personally." He extended a tentacle holding an official-looking document. Jax took it, scanning the contents. Her eyebrows rose. "They're making it a regulation?" Earth Protocol Subsection 12, Paragraph 7, Vorp confirmed. Humans are no longer permitted to perform independent danger assessments on Death World classifications. All human evaluations must be reviewed by a multi-species committee before implementation. Because I made friends with some plants? Because you made friends with plants that dissolved 42 trained explorers. Vorp's colors shifted to something that might have been amusement. "The Council believes human risk assessment is fundamentally incompatible with galactic safety standards." "That's fair." Jax finished reading the document. Wait, there's a whole section here about Earth flora. They're classifying roses as Class 2 hazards. After reviewing Earth botanical records, the Council has determined that any planet where the inhabitants casually cultivate thorned, poisonous, and carnivorous plants for aesthetic purposes should have its entire ecosystem reassessed. Vorp drifted closer to Kevin, who waved a tendril at him. "Your homeworld is terrifying, Commander. Australia has spiders that eat birds, and we still go camping. It's called living, Vorp." Her comm chimed again. This time it was Krill, looking even more exhausted than he had on the news. "Commander Riley, I need to discuss your recent application." "Oh, the fungal swarm thing?" Jax perked up. "Did it get approved?" "Absolutely not. Deathworld 89C has unstoppable fungal colonies that have consumed 3 research stations. The spores can infiltrate sealed environments. They demonstrate hive intelligence." "Right, but have you tried antifungals?" Krill's translator briefly displayed error symbols. "Have we tried? Commander, these are alien fungal swarms capable of dissolving plasteel." "Yeah, but fungus is fungus. I checked the chemical composition in your reports. Pretty similar to Earth's aggressive molds. I'm betting a combination of UV sterilization, targeted enzymes, and proper environmental controls would—" "No. It's a solid plan." "No, the answer is no. You are not going to Deathworld 89C. You're not going to befriend the fungal swarms. You are not going to return with spores in your hair or growing in your quarters or being sold on your increasingly concerning website." Jax slouched in her chair. "You're no fun. I am preventing you from accidentally starting an apocalypse." Krill rubbed his face with his foreleg. "Commander, please, I am begging you, just tend to your existing death plants and stop volunteering for suicide missions. They're only suicide missions if you're not creative about them." Krill disconnected. Jax looked at Vorp, who had been watching the exchange with what she'd learned to recognize as second-hand embarrassment. "He'll come around," she said confidently. "Once someone else tries to deal with the fungus and fails miserably, they'll call me." "That is disturbingly likely," Vorp admitted. He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, Commander, your care guide has been downloaded over 2 million times. You may have inadvertently revolutionized xenobotanical relations." "See, I'm a hero." "You braided a carnivorous plant into your hair." A hero with good hair. She reached up and patted Kevin, who preened under the attention. Right, buddy? Kevin rustled contentedly and produced a small flower. Bright blue, delicate, absolutely beautiful. He'd never done that before. Jax felt something warm bloom in her chest. Aw, Kevin, that's sweet. She took a picture for her sales page. See, this is why humans are good at this. We appreciate the little things, like murder plants that occasionally make flowers. After Vorp left, Jax pulled up her mission applications folder. Deathworld 89C was out, apparently, but there were always other options. Deathworld 103A had crystalline organisms that sang in frequencies that drove most species insane. Deathworld 56F had parasitic vines that could supposedly override neural functions. Her coffee was cold now, but she didn't care. She was already drafting proposals, humming to herself, while Kevin swayed gently to her rhythm. Outside her viewport, the stars stretched endlessly, and somewhere out there were 1,000 death worlds full of organisms the galaxy had written off as too dangerous to understand. Jack smiled. They just hadn't met the right human yet.